Hello everyone, my name is Daniel. Today I'm back with a blog post titled The Atzeret and the Days of Noah. So in this I'm going to talk about the coming Atzeret on the Sliver Day of Atonement, the Sliver calendar, the Day of Atonement comet that was discovered on September 27th and what it could mean, and then counting backwards 2,520 days from the end and see where that puts the beginning. All right. So what follows is speculation based upon observations of current events and the stars. After October 9th passed and my best theory fell flat on its face, I have become much more cautious. I still believe that the 5 prophecies that point to 2024 are valid and therefore expect things to happen pretty much any day. This creates a paradox of study and production of content where it's easier and faster to just wait and see than to study things, prove things out, document it, and then share it. So I'm not going to go through all the effort of proving everything I'm showing you. I'm just showing you raw information that points at different dates, and we can just wait and look up because our redemption draws near. So in my last post, I speculated that maybe things would happen on a full moon or a Sabbath. The full moon has come and gone, so now we are looking at Sabbaths. That said, identifying the Sabbath isn't a trivial matter, especially if you peg it to the lunar month. So this past full moon occurred at 7:26 a.m. Eastern Standard Time in New York, Washington, D.C. on the 17th. So because this is after first light, the East Coast doesn't start the 8th month until the 18th of October. However, on the West Coast, California, the full moon occurred at 4:26 a.m., which puts their start of the month on the 17th of October. So in other words, the biblical international dateline, which rotates around the globe from month to month, falls somewhere in the middle of the USA this month on a full moon calendar. So it should also be noted that we have this exact same problem if you follow the first visible sliver or crescent. So if the threshold of visibility is crossed somewhere in the 3-hour window between the East Coast and the West Coast, then you will have such a problem. So this is not unique to the full moon. It's unique to anything that's being observed where there's a degree of dependence on the position of the moon relative to the sun. So using the international dateline, or the IDL in the Pacific, is a convention of man that is less than 200 years old. It's a relatively recent invention. I was surprised at how recent that is. It wasn't until Magellan sailed around the world that we started to realize that we had this problem where, depending on which way you go, you gain or lose a day. So going off of days defined by the international dateline and based upon the visibility in Israel doesn't make much sense because that's a modern convention. That said, the full moon in Israel was during the daylight on the 17th, which puts the month starting on Friday the 18th, if you insist on using Israel as a point of reference. So, with all that said, there are 2 potential Sabbath days for the United States this month, Thursdays or Fridays, depending upon your time zone. This makes it impossible for all of Babylon to fall on the same biblical calendar day using the full moon. Because the international dateline, based on the sighting of the moon, is right in the middle of the country, half the country is going to be on one calendar day and the other half on another. So it doesn't matter which hour it falls, it's going to be on different days for the East Coast and the West Coast for the rest of this month. Next month, it won't be the same issue because it moves. There's less ambiguity. So this international dateline that everyone takes for granted is also the primary evidence making it impossible for Saturday to be the Sabbath everywhere on earth. Some countries move it around. It's a modern convention. So maybe Saturdays is the right place in Israel, but where is the proper international dateline according to the Bible? It doesn't explicitly describe one. So you've got to be careful in some of these things. I think this is why the Jews observe feast days 2 days outside of Israel and 1 day inside of Israel. But there is no clear answer, so therefore the day and hour we really don't know. We're just coming up with theories that make sense logically. All right, let's talk about the Sliver Atzeret, which is the next major appointed time for those who follow the Sliver calendar. And since I really believe that it was going to fall in the Atzeret, I'm very interested in this. So maybe I got the calendar wrong, but the feast day right. So we'll look at that. And in an earlier post, I did provide evidence from the Bible that when Ezekiel was laying on his side and it proved the 13th month, I proved that the 13th month was based on the Sliver moon. Now, I presumed because they were in captivity in Babylon that they were using the Babylonian calendar and not the biblical calendar for recording the dates. Nevertheless, I believe that it's worth considering that the Sliver moon might be the correct calendar in spite of all the other evidence I have against it. So, to identify the date of the Atzeret, which is the 8th day of Tabernacles, we must know when the 22nd day of the 7th month is, which of course means we got to know when the 7th month started. The state government of Israel places it on Wednesday, October 2nd. That's the start of the month. But for those who follow the tradition of first visible crescent, they either put it on the 3rd or the 4th of the month. So we got a 3-day window of time here. So the moon was 1.3% visible, the crescent moon, in the central USA on the evening of October 3rd, which places the first daylight on October 4th. And then, of course, that would make October 25th the Atzeret in the USA Central Time Zone. But it could also be the 24th or the 23rd, depending upon how you define new moon. Now, people say the full moon is not the new moon, but there's like 3 different definitions of new moon. Dark, day after the dark moon, first one that you can actually see, or full moon. And there's like all those different definitions of the phase of the moon that starts the month. So don't let anyone tell you that new moon means dark moon, because it's not. That's the scientific meaning. It might be what the Jews used, but it's not what the Jews used in the past. And so the meaning is fluid. It doesn't define a specific phase. All right. So since the state of Israel is observing its holy days through the 23rd, it seems logical to me that they would wait until the 24th or 25th to act against Iran. This makes the 25th a prime time for Iran, Russia, China, and North Korea to respond or preempt whatever action Israel takes. So, since the 25th is the later Atzeret date, it kind of lines up with the Jews getting through their feast and then stuff happening on the actual potential Sliver Moon feast date. There's another event going on, which is BRICS. They are meeting from October 22nd to 24th. Now, this is a great time for these nations to finalize their plans to take down Babylon the Great. And they probably wouldn't do it any earlier than the 25th, after everyone returns home from their meeting. So I would say the 25th of October is a date to pay attention to, because Israel will be ready, the BRICS will be ready, and things can get set in motion. All right, let's talk about Noah. So this is what Yeshua said. But as the days of Noah were, so shall the coming of the Son of Man be. For as in the days that were before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and given in marriage, until the day that Noah entered the ark, and knew not until the flood came, and took them all away. So shall the coming of the Son of Man be. So, basically, we would expect life to be relatively normal, and then he comes. So any world events that are going to change life from the normal can't occur before he comes, because we need people to be eating and drinking and marrying. I've been trying to figure out if eating and drinking and marrying and given in marriage could be referring to any particular feast days or timeline. Sometimes people associate tabernacles with a wedding. So sometime after tabernacles, Noah enters the ark. Just something to think about. But so shall the coming of the Son of Man be. Well, the timeline of the flood has a lot of numbers and dates. It's a schedule. It's a template. So I think that this could be referring to through that timeline, and we should be studying that timeline to understand his coming. So let's put aside the Sliver moon for a moment and consider where we are on the full moon calendar, which is the calendar I think is the true calendar for numerous reasons. The 8th month started on the 17th or 18th of October, depending upon your time zone in the United States. So this has the anniversary of Noah entering the ark on the 26th or 27th of October, with the rain starting 7 days later, on the 17th of the second month, which would be November 2nd or 3rd. And on that particular date, Jupiter is in opposition of the sun, which means at midnight it's going to be straight overhead. Of course, the Septuagint has Noah entering the ark on the 20th day, which would have Noah enter on November 5th or 6th would be the anniversary. And then the rain started 7 days later on November 12th to 13th. And then Saturn stands still in the heavens under the bowl of wrath on November 14th and 15th. So there's different theories about which one is right. I tend to lean more towards Septuagint as being the most accurate accounting of the days of Noah. But let's chart it all out and see what comes up. So here's a fun fact. The Day of Atonement, or Judgment Day, in 2031 falls on none other than October 9th. So we are told the coming of the Son of Man will be like the days of Noah. We were also told that there will be two groups of 1,260 days, one for the two witnesses and the other for the woman being taken care of in the wilderness. Add it all together and you get 2,520 days, which is 7 years on the 360-day calendar, which they had before the flood. In the days of Noah, they had a 360-day calendar. So if you subtract 2,520 days, or 7 years on a 360-day calendar, from the Day of Atonement, or October 9th in 2031, you end up on November 14th. Of course, a lot of people only look at the Day of Atonement because they think that's the Jubilee. But if you're looking for the head of the year, which would be the end of the tribulation, then that would really be the Feast of Trumpets. And that, of course, takes the 7 prophetic years ending on November 4th, starting November 4th and then ending on Feast of Trumpets in 2031. So here's my timeline I put together. And it starts with the full moon on the 17th or 18th. And I show you where the bricks are meeting, where Israel has their tabernacles, and the green indicates it's a Sabbath day, or potential Sabbath day. So we have the 24th and 25th, the last 2 days of the Sliver moon Atzeret, which look pretty good. And what's really interesting is there's a comet, comet C 2024 S1 Atlas. It was discovered on the Day of Atonement on the full moon calendar, and it comes closest to Earth, where it's going to be relatively bright, on the 23rd. And then it gets closer and closer to the sun. It's going to get brighter and brighter, but because it's so close to the sun, it's going to be hard to see because the sun is just so bright. And the comet is closest to the sun on the 28th. So, right after the Atzeret ends, we go straight into the days that Noah entered the ark, or the anniversary thereof, according to the Masoretic text. So, and then we have the comet, and then the end of those 7 days, and the start of the flood, according to the Masoretic text, is November 2nd, which is when Jupiter is opposite the sun, straight overhead in the middle of the night. So that would be a Masoretic. I guess I have a typo there. That's when the flood started. Now, if you're following the Septuagint, then you have entering the ark on November 5th, the day of the election, which is also Guy Fawkes Day. Remember, the 5th of November. So everyone with dreams of blowing up Parliament knows about Guy Fawkes Day, and that's a day in England where they have fires and just celebrate by having campfires. It also lines up with the 2,520 days until Trumpets 2031. So we could definitely see a situation where the election on November 5th is the start of a 7-year count. So that's when they enter the ark. And of course, 7 days later, around November 12th to 13th, you have the flood start, according to the days of Noah on the Septuagint. And then immediately after that, on the 14th, that's when Saturn is standing still. So like the October 9th sign, when Jupiter was standing perfectly still, on November 14th, Saturn is standing perfectly still, 14th, 15th, that time frame. So depending on whether or not you think the tribulation ends on the Day of Atonement or the Feast of Trumpets, 7 years from now, would kind of bias whether you're looking on the election or a week after the election for things to go down. But this comment on the Day of Atonement with the solar flares and all that on October 9th, there's just a lot of things that are going on the full moon calendar, the holy days, right? We had the first Hurricane Helene came on Day of Atonement, and then on October 9th we had the Atzeret. We had the hurricane, we had a solar flare. We discovered a comet on the Day of Atonement, and that comet is showing up here in the middle of the days of Noah. Very, very interesting. And then lastly, we are still waiting for a 8th star to appear in the crown on top of Draco, and that could happen any day. So when you see that, if it's a warning at all, I would say it might be the 7-day warning when that happens. So keep your eye out for that. And of course, this is the path of the comet that's coming. And you see that its closest approach to Earth is around October 23rd, and it does a really quick loop around the sun. Now, when this last comet that we've been tracking went by the sun, it caused massive solar flares to be directed at Earth, causing a major geomagnetic storm. And those flares were emitted on October 9th. So if this comet, which is going to be even closer to the sun, does anything like it, then we should expect more solar storms heading this way. Probably sometime several days after the comet gets close. So I would say the 28th through the 2nd of November. 28th of October through the 2nd of November would be a good window for solar storm activity. And this chart here just shows you where its peak brightness is going to be at the very end of October. It could be almost as bright as Venus, according to some reports. So that's my update with the days to look at in the next month, next 30 days. And if I had to weight all these different days, I think I'm leaning toward the middle of November, around either the election with the Septuagint entering the ark, or when the flood started around the 12th to 13th of November, as being the most promising dates. And the reason I say that is I think that the events coming out of the Atzeret here in the Sliver calendar with bricks and all that, the timeline seems a little compressed. I don't see Israel and everyone else being able to put into motion whatever plans they've been coming up with, particularly the bricks, just the day after their event ends. I think they reach the agreement, wait a week, pull the trigger right around the election. I also think that the election could really change things here in the United States, because we're so divided. Anything could happen, because it doesn't matter who wins or who the media says wins. There's going to be half the population that is not going to believe it or trust it or be willing to accept it. So it could be very, very interesting times anytime after November 5th. All right, well, thanks for staying tuned. I will see you next time.